normal.
The chamber pressure looks good.
Toggling up. Roger, roll, planet.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight downside SCE off. Bring in SCE off.
Yikes. You bet.
Concur.
We don't need any more of these.
Continues to be hard.
What's up, everybody? We are live from Kennedy Space Center, and I was going to say that I'm looking at SLS right now, but unfortunately, some storms happened. But sure enough, SLS is on the pad. There you go. See? I told you it was on the pad. And yeah, we are at L-3. We're a couple days away from the launch of Artemis 1, hopefully. I see the 5x5s coming in. Thank you, everybody. Once again, I'm Jack Beyer. I'm going to be your host today for NASASpaceflight Live as we talk about all things Artemis. But it's not just going to be me. I'm also joined by our competent cadre of hosts, including Alex. What's up, Alex?
Well, I'm great. Kind of hoping that we actually see this rocket lift off in just a few days.
I really hope so as well. I think the forecast going forward is not as brutal as what we're seeing right now, so hopefully it's smooth sailing from here on out. But watch, I just probably jinxed us. Also joining us for the broadcast today, of course, we wouldn't have anyone else for a SLS special than Mr. Philip Sloss. Philip, what's up?
Ready to try this again. I hope NASA is too.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I also hope we are ready to try this again, and it seems like they are. Although, maybe we'll get into this in a little bit. When we were out at remote setup today, there was a significant number of people working on the tail service umbilical mast or whatever it's called. Slightly disconcerting, but hopefully just some last minute work. I think that's nominal. But anyways, we have our usual Q&A thing. If you want to ask us a question, if you want to ask a question about SLS or anything else in general, at NASASpaceflight in chat, and we will see your question pop up and answer it. But I think we will start off with, I don't know, Philip, do you want to give us a rundown, or like what's the state of play right now? Where are all the pieces on the board as we get closer to the 16th and launch day?
Well, I think they are obviously Hurricane Nicole. Even though it was a minimum Category 1, I guess on some scales, they're still doing a little bit of cleanup, kind of in parallel with launch preparations. And so, as you were talking about, you all saw that when you were out setting up remotes at the east, at least at the pictures I saw from the east camera site, which is kind of cool inside the gates. But that's
basically exactly what the view you're seeing right now. Same location is this exact spot.
Right.
Oops.
The I don't know if they're having. It's possible that that feed is from NASA, and given the weather in the area right now, it could be we could have some issues, just continuity issues for a few minutes here. So, but
yep.
That one of the things that Jim Free, who is the head of the whole directorate, said in a telecon yesterday on Friday, was that there was a one of the things that was damaged was a wire harness, and it's basically just a electrical cable, and they were looking to replace that, and that's on this infamous tail service mast umbilical on the hydrogen one. And so it looked like the pictures that we saw from some of the photographers out there was that they were still working around those cables. So it's a cable that runs from the actual those big 30-foot tall masts into the umbilical plate, and then obviously connecting to the vehicle. And so hopefully there is a not a telecon. It's a media briefing, and I think it's a full NASA TV briefing at 7 p.m. Eastern. So that's about 4 hours from now, I believe. And so we should hear from management, and hopefully they'll give us an update on where they stand with any of the hurricane cleanups and any of the open items that they still had from the hurricane. And then, as I was saying, they're continuing with launch preparations. I think they still had one Ordnance Connect operation with Orion that they were they juggled that, so it's right in front of the launch countdown. And so the launch countdown is supposed to start overnight tonight. I think it's call to stations is at 1:24 a.m. Eastern, and then the countdown clock would start about 30 minutes after that. And so, and then they're targeting for as we're hopefully relatively well disseminated, that the launch, the target launch time, the opening of the launch window that they're shooting for right now is 1:04 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday, November 16th. That would be 6:04 UTC. And so, we're there. So basically, kind of where they are right now is, again, this type of weather will slow down the work that they're doing at the pad. And so, I don't know if we have since the feed is down, I can't gesture to some of one of the things that we saw them do over the last day was to move. There are these they're extensible columns and the side flame deflectors that are rolled in on tracks underneath the platform.
Like the triangular looking things?
Right.
Okay.
Those go in. So there is a primary flame deflector that is in the trench for the launch pad, and I've clicked back on the NASA stream so I can see what I'm looking at here. And the extensible columns provide additional structural support for the platform of the mobile launcher. So the mobile launcher being, you've got the platform that the rocket stands on, but then you have this large umbilical tower that's got all of the swing arms that attach to the upper parts of the rocket. And so that's why you make the distinction between shuttle, which just had a mobile launch platform, and SLS, which has got a mobile launcher, which is the umbilical tower and the platform together. So they rolled the side flame deflectors and the extensible columns roll in and kind of straddle the main flame deflector, which is in the trench, in the pad trench. And that will deflect all of the exhaust from both the core stage engines and the solid rocket boosters to the north. And if you were looking at that, stream, that feed, and again in this picture, that would be from left to right. So
all the plume will go out to the right.
That's right. From this point of view. So like you were looking at the I think we briefly if you're looking at the countdown clock, or where Jack is at the press side, I think that's where he is. Yep. It'll be going kind of from foreground to background. But of course, it should be dark on Wednesday morning if we get to that point. I think everybody's got their fingers crossed for that. So, and this picture does show that configuration where you've got the side flame deflectors and it's hard to see if you didn't see a before and after shot. But in this shot, they're kind of under. It's sort of a dark area directly underneath the rocket. And that's one of the side flame deflectors that you can see there. So anyway, that's one of the things that they adjusted the time of that, and so that's a good thing that they got. For instance, that they got that done before the weather moved in today, so that they don't have to they don't run out of time at the end of the countdown. As an example, the very first not launch countdown, but the very first wet dress rehearsal countdown they tried in April. They had scheduled to do this the day before launch, and they had a huge weather system roll in and severe weather roll in right at the time they were going to do that. And so one of the changes that they made going forward was basically to just find a good time to do that. And so now they're doing it here 3 days before launch.
Good thing they did. The weather
Yeah.
definitely rolled in. Really quick, I want to thank Spherical Rat. Thank you so much, Spherical Rat, for the extremely generous super chat there. It's a $100 super chat. Holy cow.
Oof.
And Spherical Rat says,
Wow.
Sloss fan club, which I think I think we're all on the
Yeah.
fan club, but Spherical Rat especially so.
I
thank
apologize for the little grunt there. Where I'm looking. I think I'm looking at old live feed, but it was just a sunburst in there. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Thank you, Spherical Cat, though. I appreciate it.
Spherical Rat. Get it right. No, I'm kidding. Seriously, thank you so much, though, buddy. That's awesome. And also, Jim Cabot is gifted a Red Team membership. Dougal gifted 5 Red Team memberships. We see the support coming in. We're just, we're doing our SLS thing. Mostly Philip is, which is what we want. So thank you for the support. Jim with another Red Team membership. Moldy Space gifting 5. Thank you, Moldy Space. We hope you enjoy your newfound gifted memberships if you got one. And Rough Rider Show, thank you for the support. Saying, SLS has so far cost me over $1,000 in stays for all these launch attempts. Please launch. Question for Philip. Are you surprised they are not going to retighten the seals after storm and rolling? Kind of, there was something on, is that on the tail service umbilical mast or whatever? Is that the same thing?
Well, it's actually good, and anybody who happened to be listening along to the telecon, Chris G asked that question. So there are 2 areas where they've had hydrogen leaks. The very first one they had in April was behind the plates that actually connect directly to the rocket. So it was an area called a purge can, and what they found when they took a look at that. After they saw a leak indication in there, they checked the torque on the bolts and they found that the torque readings were under torqued, and so there was some suspicion that some of the movement from rolling out, rolling back, and also just that they hadn't checked those for a long time, could have contributed to that issue. But once they started instituting, they basically said what they would do is then they look to at least check the torque on those bolts before every tanking going forward. And so, at least as far as I know, they have not seen a leak in the purge can area since then. What's happened, especially beginning with the first launch attempt at the end of August, is they've been seeing a leak indication in the umbilical cavity, which is basically this relatively small space between the actual ground side plate that connects to the flight plate that's on the core stage. And so the leaks inside that area are coming from the quick disconnect. And there are 2 large hydrogen propellant quick disconnects in there. And those, they do not suspect that the issues that they're seeing with those have to do with being jostled, for want of a better term, either by rolling out or rolling back, or your random 85 mile an hour hurricane. So that's when they did the test out at the pad in mid-September, they found that they were able to, after replacing the seals again, they really feel like in terms of the quick disconnect seals, that the issue is how they load the propellant in terms of managing the pressure and because liquid hydrogen is so cold and is a very small molecule, it really wants to find any voids at all, any tiny voids. And so
try to just go out on a limb here and say, this is my opinion, not the official stance of NSF, but hydrogen is a jerk.
Yeah. Well,
Anyways.
I mean, this is, we'll see. I mean, one of the things that they've emphasized since then, and unfortunately, they've now had 2 hurricanes since the last time they tanked the vehicle in that test that they did on September 21st. But basically, what they're saying is that they're learning how to load this vehicle, and so again, you've got an 8-inch diameter fill and drain line, and then you have a 4-inch diameter bleed line, and the larger diameter lines, because the bigger surface area that you have to seal. It seems like they're having more issues with the fill and drain than they have with the bleed line. And then, the second stage, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, it types of fluid lines going in and out of it. It's just that they're much smaller, and so you don't have as large of a sealing surface. These are 8-inch diameter is pretty big there. It's hard to see in this picture what the because it's surrounded by all sorts of other umbilical connections. So, but one of the things they said was, they need to be able to, to be able to tank the vehicle acceptably, and they have some wiggle room. It's just they're figuring out where that wiggle room is right now. They've been learning kind of on the edges, and they're trying to find kind of a sweet spot for the filling the tank in the first place, and then all of the tanking process going forward from there. So, on launch day, it's for hydrogen, and well, for all of them, but like you fill the tank up and you get it into a topping mode. But then you have to also, in parallel with that, you have to condition the rest of the hardware, basically from the tank through all of the feed lines to the engines, and the engines themselves, you have to thermally condition those lines too. And so the way that this is working for this vehicle is you first fill the tank up, and then you get into what they call replenish, and then you start to condition the engine hardware. And so they've had problems with both. And so the good thing is the last time they tried this in just a test scenario, they did some more experimentation, they tried some different things, and they seemed to at least find on that day they were able to find a way to get through the entire sequence. So hopefully we'll see the same thing on, and it's really going to be, tanking is going to start many hours before the opening of the launch window. I think it probably the process is going to end up being over 9 hours before, so we're going to spend a lot of Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening, and Tuesday night talking about this, hopefully, if they get there.
Got it. All right.
Yeah, I was about to make you to make a question about that, because I've been oh boy, before every attempt to launch Artemis 1, I have kind of had like a list of the major steps that they have to go through the countdown, just to make sure that they are sort of on track, and try to gauge how on track or how delayed they are. And they keep changing the countdown. They added, I think it was another hour for the September 3rd attempt, if I remember correctly. And now I've seen, or at least I checked with the previous countdown that I had, that they have also probably added a little bit more time in the countdown. So, like, are they starting earlier? Like, how is that? Because
yes,
I'm not really sure, because all of these changes are a little bit different between each other.
Yes, and so those are I'd say the main thing at the beginning of launch day is that they basically are going to start the hydrogen side of the core stage loading. And so when we talk about hydrogen issues, it really has been focused on the core stage. And so you have, again, SLS has got the solid rocket boosters, would provide most of the thrust to get the vehicle off the ground. But then after they separate, you've got these two cryogenic stages, the core stage, which starts on the ground and it runs for 8 minutes, and carries the rest of the vehicle up to orbital velocity. But then you also have the ICPS, which we mentioned before. And so the issues for the most part have been with fueling the core stage. And for the most part, they talk about quick disconnect. For the most part, we're talking about the connection from the ground to the vehicle. And so folks might remember when they did the green run testing at Stennis Space Center, Mississippi, and that's a couple of years ago now, practically. They did not have this level of issues with the hydrogen at that site. But what they've done now, based on the experience from this last tanking test, which is almost 2 months ago now, there are 2 holds in the countdown, and they extended that first hold, which is basically a decision point. They extended that hold from 2.5 hours to 3.5 hours. And again, the point of that hold in the countdown, where the countdown clock stops, is they'll basically take a look at the situation, and management will decide whether do we want to start tanking the vehicle and proceed with the launch attempt, and then down it, and then there's a 30-minute hold at T-minus 10 minutes, which is that decision point is, are we ready to launch? And so what they've done at the front end of launch day is they extended that pre-tanking hold. So the countdown clock it'll count down to 6 hours, 40 minutes, and then it'll stop. They'll have that mission management team briefing, and then they'll either give a go or a no-go to tank the vehicle, and they'll actually start into the fueling process on the core stage, assuming they get the go. And so if you've been following the previous launch attempts, the mission management team gives a go for the launch team to continue, and then I believe the final go is obviously down to the launch director, Charlie Blackwell Thompson. So she'll take that, and then she will do a poll of her launch team, and then she'll give her go to tank the vehicle. And so on the new timeline, the major change is that for the past launch attempts, they would start with the liquid oxygen chill downs first, and then about an hour later they would start the liquid hydrogen process. On Tuesday, or whenever the next launch attempt is, the plan is to start those at the same time. So on the timeline that we have that NASA has supplied, pardon me, those would both start at 9 hours and 15 minutes before the planned T0, the opening of the launch window at 1:04 a.m. Eastern. So, and the reason for that is, again, they've had issues in the past. The philosophy that they're taking with the hydrogen now is to use lower flow rates and lower pressure, because it's a pressure fed system. So they're gonna take it real slow at first, and I think that the phrase that we heard them talk about was basically babying the quick disconnect seals. So they're just gonna basically take a lot longer. Yeah, right. They called it a kinder, gentler loading. But I think the idea is you're trying to condition that the circumference of that 8-inch fill and drain quick disconnect, so that and hopefully that the hardware it's going to thermally contract, because you're talking about over 400 degrees of a spread between room temperature, so to speak, and liquid hydrogen temperature. And so that is also applies to the all the way from the storage tank, the storage sphere. That's they were talking about there are these lines, they're called cross country lines, that run from the storage sphere to the mobile launcher, and they're over 1,200 feet long. And I apologize for using SI units, but those are the numbers that we were given. But we're talking about, what is that? That's it's like a quarter. Well, maybe not quite a quarter of a mile, but a decently long run. And so as you start flowing that, it's liquid hydrogen is very it is a low density compared to liquid oxygen, which has got kind of the density of water. But liquid hydrogen is a very low density fluid, and so it doesn't require a lot of pressure. And one of the things that I was talking with a couple of people in either management or launch team on Friday was, what controls they have over the hydrogen. And so they're basically, the setup they have is different than the setup that they had at Stennis. and so they're basically learning how to manage this manage this system, and we can go into that, but I think I've talked for long enough and I should at least take a breath. So maybe we can maybe we
Yeah.
can we can we can certainly, we have time to talk about that and go into that in more depth. But I mean, I guess the bottom line is they're going to start earlier with hydrogen, and that's another thing with starting earlier is that if they have issues like they've had in the past, then that gives them more time to troubleshoot those. And as we saw in the first couple of launch attempts, they were falling behind the timeline, and even though you have 2 hours to work with, that's still a finite amount of time. So they're trying, they want to have time to troubleshoot, and they also want to be able to hit the opening of the window, because if there are any other issues that they have to deal with, then they want to use that time for those other things.
Got it. All right, cool. Spock, thank you for becoming a Capcom member. Super appreciate all of our members. Thank you so much. If you guys don't know, the membership program is a thing that we have through YouTube. It shows up right there below the timeline. If you don't see it on mobile, I think it's on mobile. You have to go on a web browser. But at the different levels of support that you can pledge to us monthly, you get different amounts of perks. And at Capcom level, which Spock just became, you get Discord access. We have an awesome Discord. There's a Kerbal Space Program and gaming channel. There's all kinds of channels. There's one for SpaceX, one for Starship, one for Artemis, all kinds of stuff. The Discord is a lot of fun and a cool place to hang out. And Spock, when that access propagates for you there through YouTube, join us, and we will say hey and find some spaces on there that you enjoy. Thanks you to all of our members, and if you even have thought about becoming a member, thank you. Patrick Ambly, thank you for the support. They say, I'm personally nervous that NASA has go fever and have missed hurricane damage, especially with NASA claiming ITAR on wind limits at the last presser. Boy, that was something. Am I overreacting? What do you guys think? Personally, this is just my opinion. I do not get the vibe that there is go fever. I understand your concern. The ITAR wind limits thing was weird. I don't think it was weird because they have go fever. I think that was just sort of emblematic of ITAR use in general. But I digress. I don't know. What is your what vibe are you getting, Philip? Go fever or no?
Well, I think it's I think objectively, I think there's at least a little bit of a sense that they sort of got caught out at the pad, and Jim Free did say in the telecon on Friday that if they had perfect hindsight and they knew that they were going to have a even a borderline Cat 1 hurricane get that close to the Space Center before they rolled out, then they probably would not have. So that's, I think that is, it's fair. I think it's fair to point that out. I think I think sometimes you need a little bit of luck, and they obviously had some good luck with the fact that the storm did not get closer, and it did not get a stronger than it did. I think this is a fairly unusual thing to have a strong tropical storm in early November or mid-November. Yeah. And so that's, I don't know that that's necessarily a good excuse, but the numbers that they had in front of them, they actually discussed. They did a telecon before they rolled out, and they felt in sort of going around the room, and this is obviously within internally, this wasn't a discussion that we get to hear, that they thought it was an acceptable risk to roll out to the pad, and I think that the in terms of what actually happened with the hurricane, it's looking at some of the data in real time. You have to wonder, you have to be careful about reading too much into it, because we don't get to see we just don't get to see the entire data set, and so I don't think I don't think that they are. Really the issue is that we're not going to be able to have good enough insight or oversight from the public, from the outside, to objectively judge them. It's going to require, for us, it's going to require hindsight. We will see what we'll see what happens, but I do think I think that they were, it's probably it can be both things at once. They can be lucky that they that they didn't that they didn't see a worse hurricane, but at the same time, the actual loads that they saw and the winds that they saw were underneath their what you call limit load. So and the vehicle's designed for a certain level of loads, and then there's 40% margin on top of that. But it is designed to see up to that much load. And one of the things that they did a lot of wind tunnel testing, and they didn't just do wind tunnel testing of the vehicle, for instance, up at Mach 4 or Mach 5 for SRB-SEP. They actually tested. They did ground wind testing with a mobile launcher and doing winds, and so they used that data to help not anchor their models, because again, they don't have any flight data yet, but they did do wind tunnel testing with a subscale model to get some loading data for the vehicle out there. And so it's I do think it's fair to say, again, it's basically what he said. If they'd known beforehand that they were going to get into an issue, then they probably wouldn't have. If they'd known what was going to happen, they would have stayed in the VAB. But they also were lucky, and they did not see winds above and loading above their flight loads. I think Jim Free said that they saw probably about 75% of their of the loads that the vehicle's qualified to. But again, we have to take their word for it, because we don't have any insight or oversight.
Can we really quickly, can we go wider on this camera? There's a gnarly rainbow that just popped up.
Oh.
But yeah, do continue, Philip. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, it's hard to say. Again, I do wish, I've had my own problems with the amount of disclosure and the amount of information we have, and sort of some of the calls that they've made on what's export controlled and what isn't. But it isn't. When it comes down to the actual decisions, I do feel like we are. There you go. That we are. The amount of information we have is inconclusive, and we're sort of stuck waiting to see what happens. And so this is not. It's not ideal if you want to follow along very closely. But was that just
lightning in the rainbow? Did I just hallucinate that? Oh wow. Okay. Alex, what do you think? Go Fever or not?
Oh man, I have mixed feelings. I think things that are similar to what Philip said about the disclosure of information. Most of the concerns that most of the people in the media had stem from the same thing. We don't have all the access to all the data. We don't have all the access to all the limits that the rocket can see while on the pad. So it's totally within reason that, because we don't know, we just are asking, and it's totally also fair that, because NASA was, all the employees and things like that there at Florida that were going through, the storm preparations, evacuation, and things like that. it's totally fair that they didn't give any feedback in the moment, and I guess that's why Jim Free went out and said, "Hey, I'm gonna do a press briefing about this and just give some of the results out of what happened to the rocket." But on the other hand, I also think that just because you don't you cannot say all the specifics about the data, you can put just even just a very summarized kind of comment out there on what's the status. And I think that's partially the problem here that we have had, and not really go fever. It's that I believe NASA is actually doing the things that are within reason and within margins of engineering, all the studies that they have in hand, all the data that they have in hand. The problem is we don't have any of that data. We don't have any access to that kind of decisions. So at the end of the day, we only get to know about those decisions after the fact. And in the meantime, we're thinking that they're doing something, dangerous and precarious, like, oh my gosh, you're doing this. Why are you doing this, right? I think that's the issue here, the main issue. And I know they've tried in the past to improve this, but as Hurricane Nicole showed, it's not working that well. And I'm really hoping, knock on wood, nothing happens during the launch. But if something were to happen, I don't want to imagine how that's going to be communicated. If it were to happen, I don't know, but even just a small issue could be overblown just because we don't have all the data into what's going on. And
Well, you know what I always say: more data,
yeah.
more better.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Meaningless, thank you for the support there. They say, can't wait to see this launch from the main visitor center complex. First ever time to see a launch in person. Meaningless, buckle up, Buttercup. It's gonna be awesome. In fact, and thank you for the support there, buddy. That sort of brings me to one of our viewer questions here. Let me just talk slowly while I look for it. Somebody was asking if we're bummed that it's a night launch. Here we go. Shay or Chez or Ches is asking, what are your feelings about a night launch? I'm quite annoyed as you can only see the plume instead of rocket. It's going to be awesome either way. I would prefer a day launch, of course, but me personally, a launch is a launch. When I was a kid, I saw a shuttle launch from up close, like on the causeway, like 6 miles away, and that was a night launch. And the solid boosters are so bright. All rocket launches at night kind of turned night to day for a little bit, but shuttle was kind of special because of just how bright it was. It's kind of insane, and I expect the same from SLS. So that'll be a cool effect either way. Alex, what are your feelings about the night launch?
Hey. Well, I kind of wished that the first launch was going to be daylight. I kind of had this feeling that eventually we'll have to be during night. But I did say at one point, hey, the first launch, that's got to be in daylight. And then you can launch during the night,
Right.
whatever amount of times you want, like Artemis 2, 3, 4, whatever. If you want to launch all of those during the night, okay, but the first one, please, during daylight. Oh well, but now that the first one is during night, now it's gotta be the other way around. All of the following ones need to be during daylight.
Yeah, it still surprises me that that launching during the day wasn't sort of a criteria that they wanted to stick to. Scott Manley, what up? Hello, Scott. In chat says this will be the brightest rocket launch ever. Is that quantifiable? Do we know this? That's pretty cool. If so.
Well, I guess not counting the explosion of the M1. It was during the night, I think. So
that's pretty hilarious. Let's do some more questions. How about, because we do have a bunch of really good ones, and don't forget, if you have any questions at NASASpaceflight in chat, we'll see your question pop up. We might answer it. Let's see here. Chris Robinson is asking, when it comes to loading and unloading the fuel, we were talking a little bit about that earlier. Is the fuel loaded from the top down, or is it unloaded from the bottom? I believe it's loaded from the bottom and unloaded from the bottom, like both.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So those, the tail service masses we were looking at before. So I was talking about the fill and drain lines, and there are ones in both of those tail service masts. So in this picture, the liquid oxygen tail service mast is on the left, and the liquid hydrogen is on the right. And in terms of the core stage, all of the fuel goes in and out through those lines. So now this one in the picture on the left, the liquid hydrogen tail service mast, and then the umbilical itself is in the foreground, and the oxygen is in the background. But all of the fuel goes in and out of the vehicle of the core stage through there. Now the upper stage, there's an umbilical arm up there but I believe it's very similar. It's filled through from the bottom up.
Got it. Cool. Jack Kerman, good name there, Jack, is asking, will you add the Artemis launch to the intro? Yes. That is a no-brainer.
And that's the intro guy replying to that question. So
yeah, I feel like it's time. I think it's time with the new year, with the launch of Artemis. It's about time for a new one.
Yeah.
So
I don't think anybody. I don't know how many people are. It is still possible that they could launch during the daytime, but it wouldn't be if they launch on Wednesday. It will not be.
All right.
But
that is an excellent point, and immediately makes me want to ask the next question. But finish your thought. Sorry.
No, that's what I was going to say. I think the opportunity on the 16th would be at night. The same thing for the opportunity on the 19th. But I believe again, I don't think anybody. I don't know how many people want to stay in Florida for that long who don't already live there.
oh boy.
But
Sure
the 25th is they told us that they got permission from the FAA to try on the 25th if they have to, and that I believe would be a lighted launch. So
right after sunrise.
stay.
Oh my God,
as I was saying,
that would be so amazing. What? Okay, so this is the question I mentioned wanting to ask. A lot of people, as you would expect, are asking if it scrubs, what are the next opportunities? So right now, launch is scheduled for 1:04 a.m. That's the opening of a 120-minute, 2-hour-long launch window on the 16th. But those are all the other dates. But correct me if I'm wrong. If they fuel and scrub for some reason on the 16th, the 17th at that point is out, right?
That's right. So
realistically, if it doesn't go on the 16th, the next opportunity is on the 18th.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing, I could probably answer all of these questions just by saying it's complicated, but it is complicated. So
Well,
they have
how and why.
Right, they have basically so today's the 13th. I think they might not have actually had the 13th, but the launch period that we're in opened yesterday actually, and it runs all the way until November 27th. There are a few days inside of it where they couldn't launch, but pretty much on any day in terms of the celestial mechanics, where's the moon, where's the sun, they can launch pretty much any day between now and the 27th. But then there are other restrictions. So one of them is what you just mentioned, which is they don't have enough hydrogen. We're going to talk about hydrogen a lot, but they don't have enough hydrogen to fuel the vehicle yet. Maybe next launch, but they don't have enough hydrogen right now to try fueling the vehicle every day. Come back if they scrub, come back tomorrow. They also have Thanksgiving week is next week, and so that may complicate issues with they have this thing called the holiday airspace relaxation plan. But the FAA, the idea is but they're basically trying to open up some of the what's typically restricted airspace to ease some of the holiday air travel traffic that you're going to see next week. So regardless of whether Artemis 1 has launched or not, so it is a little complicated, and so it's going to kind of depend on what happens. So if something were to hold them up between now and Wednesday, then maybe, and they don't fuel the vehicle on Wednesday, maybe Thursday's an option, maybe Friday's an option. So I think because of the extra Thanksgiving issues in terms of the holiday airspace, they might stick to those hard dates that they gave us. So right now those are the 16th, the 19th, and the 25th. So, I think the way I look at it, they're going to kind of play it by ear, so to speak, and so we just have to you kind of take it one launch attempt at a time. If they, let's see what happens on the 16th. If they tank, it probably kind of narrows down what their options are at that point. So, but those are the backup dates right now. The primary date's the 16th. The two backup dates that they are sort of tentatively reserving are the 19th and the 25th.
I do wonder though, why are they not attempting right before that closure? Because if I remember correctly, that closure is the 23rd, 24th, 25th, the 26th, if I remember correctly, and then they can resume on the 27th. And they asked for one attempt on the 25th, but they did not ask for an attempt on the 22nd.
Right.
Which
well,
is,
there's the one thing that we talked about, I think more back in August and September, which was the flight termination system. So that's yet another complicating factor in this. So you have the amount of hydrogen capacity they have at the pad right now. You have the flight termination system. You have the Thanksgiving airspace restrictions in the United States, and then you have the celestial mechanics that give you this sort of that define this launch period that we're looking at right here on the left. So yeah, the 25th is the last day that they sort of hard and fast have with the flight termination system. So
okay.
And if you remember in September, they were doing these hot and heavy negotiations with the Eastern Test Range about can we go past that date that they had in September. So like I said, it's complicated. And so, for now, we probably should just concentrate on the 16th and just remember that they do have they have at least two other opportunities if they can't do it on the 16th, and maybe it will, it'll be sometime after the 16th if they have to go to a backup opportunity.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
It's just that because, it just looks to me that the more attempts that they can get, the more chances they have to be able to launch in this launch period. Because, oh man, SLS has had it doesn't have a lot of luck, let's say.
No, but I mean, when we're just talking about the hurricane, I would say that they were pretty fortunate. Again, that did come down to a certain degree to luck, that it didn't get closer or get stronger than it did. So
super lucky.
Just for perspective, just remember they got a little lucky this last week.
Let's do some more viewer questions. We're getting a bunch of good ones coming in. JTrains 310 is asking, in case of bad luck, what is next launch period? So we just went over this launch period, but in case of really bad luck, if they, what is the next launch period? I forget what they call them. It's like they're numbered, right? 90 something.
They just they started, and you probably figure, if you just do the math in terms of the months, they have opportunities. In general, the opportunities are basically in a 2 weeks on or 2 weeks available and then 2 weeks not available. And so the next one opens on December 9th, and that period runs through December 23rd. But then, as we've talked about, there are days in there where they, 2 or 3 days within that fortnight that they cannot, that they could not launch for some other constraint besides the, where the moon and the sun are. So, and then the next one after that would be, let's see, it looks like from January 6th through January 20th. So, it's kind of in that period, but again, since it's complicated, if they had to push to early December, then this whole flight termination system thing will or maybe I should probably, what I should probably say is if they have to go past November 25th, then the flight termination system becomes the big negotiation thing.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they'll
Um,
launch it on December 13th. That is my birthday.
They just say "Happy birthday, Alex." We're like right on the broadcast, and then like the official NASA broadcast.
It's in 1 month, okay? So
I hope this thing has already launched.
Right.
By then. I really sincerely do. As much as I would like a day launch, I
yeah.
think we want to see this
Hard-
rocket fly. It's been a long road.
And it gets worse next month, right, Philip? Because next month, then the attempts will be more into the night rather than. I think there will be only like a couple of daylight opportunities, if I remember correctly. So it gets
Right.
worse if they delay.
Yeah, the winter they have they tended to have the windows tend to be predominantly at night, closer to the winter solstice, and then predominantly in the daytime closer to the summer solstice. Obviously, I'm referring to the northern hemisphere here, but yeah.
Got it. Let's see here. John Ryan is asking if Artemis 1 launches, what's the status for Artemis 2? John is like looking ahead.
Right.
He's very forward thinking.
Well, Artemis 2, it you know what? It's probably not quite as complicated as the stuff that we've been talking about, but it is still Artemis. The Artemis 2 hardware is, kind of it's still in a few pieces and needs to be put together, but really the Artemis 2 schedule depends on when Artemis 1 launches, because the Orion crew module for Artemis 2 is going to reuse some of the equipment in the Artemis 1 crew modules inside the crew module for Artemis 1 when it gets back. So it has to wait until it gets back. Right now, let me just quickly pull up if they were to launch on Wednesday, it would be about a 25-day mission, and splashdown would be around December 11th. That would probably set them up for maybe the crew module getting back to Kennedy. It'll splash down off the coast of San Diego. They'll have to ship it. I think ground ship it to Kennedy, but it would get back to Kennedy hopefully around New Year's, and then they'd need to go in and get those pieces off and send them over to from one facility to another at the Space Center. But obviously, since those schedules are tied together, the earlier that they launch Artemis 1, the earlier that they can launch Artemis 2. So I think what they've basically said, rule of thumb, is it's probably going to be a couple of years from whenever Artemis 1 launches to whenever Artemis 2 would be ready to launch.
Got it.
Yeah, there was a recent GAO report talking about that. I'm literally looking at it right now, and it says, specifically, NASA estimates it will require about 27 months between Artemis 1 and Artemis 2 due to Orion integration activities and reuse of avionics from the Artemis 1 crew capsule on the Artemis 2 crew capsule. So if it splashed down in December, that will probably mean all the way to 2025, I guess, for Artemis 2, which is,
I would say
not
realistically,
great,
yeah.
yeah.
Realistically, yeah. It is, again, I think, the prime contractor for Orion is Lockheed Martin, and I know that they want to take that challenge on of shortening that time frame down. So I think, the other, if you ask NASA, I think really all they'll say at this point is talk to us after Artemis 1 about the Artemis 2 schedule. And I do think once the mission's over and once they've got those they've got that equipment off the Artemis 1 spacecraft, they'll run the numbers and see if they can do better in 2 years.
Got it. Well, hopefully. It'd be cool to see SLS flying even just like a yearly cadence, like they've been talking about eventually getting to.
Well,
Right,
that will
but that's-
mean
Yeah, it's going to be a while
Yeah.
because they only have again they've got the sort of the version 1 of the rocket that we're looking at here, and they're only going to fly that 3 times, and then the version 2 of the rocket is still in development, and so when that 4th launch happens is probably even less certain. And so then once they've started producing those rockets, then they have to sort of iterate on that and get into a better cadence in terms of launching them. So there'll probably be a little disruption between the 3rd and the 4th launch in terms of when they can go. And then of course, folks who are familiar with Artemis 4 know that they're also having to build another mobile launcher for that, and that, at least as of right now, that's actually the long pole in the schedule for that, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
kind of infuriating, but that's neither here nor there.
Also, Artemis 3 and Artemis 4 are depending on the Starship as well, so
Right.
we'll see.
Remy Turk, thank you for the support. They say, is there a minimum altitude for engaging the flight termination system? Hopefully purely hypothetical. Wow, what a question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I guess it's actually an interesting question in terms of, I don't know, I think about it in terms of altitude, but maybe in terms of time, it's like how quickly would you, would the range safety officer, because it's armed before liftoff, and so then the question is how quickly would you need to send signals to so yeah, I don't know the answer to the question, but it's they will be ready, and something like on the second flight when they have a crew on board, and this would be similar to what you see with SpaceX, the launch abort system is armed before liftoff, and so they once they do that for sure, they're looking at they're looking at if something happens, they have to be ready to um, take action. And the range safety officer would be, the range safety officer still has their role to play in this. And so, yeah, but it is an interesting question. I don't know how quickly you would want to do that, even if you had an issue.
Mr. Huggy in chat has the best answer. I laughed, but I was muted. Mr. Huggy says the minimum height is about 60 meters, or the height of SLS.
Maybe.
Oh, that would be bad. We kid. Oh, looks like we have a poll in chat. SLS's next attempt. Do you think it'll be a launch or a scrub?
Is that Chris?
Yeah, that would be Chris. That wasn't me.
Shuttle.
But space shuttle, horses. Member content. Let's see here. What are you talking? Huh? Let's see here.
I got that reference.
We do have a bunch of questions asking about, what do we think do we think it'll scrub on this attempt? Do we think it'll go on this attempt? Let's see. Let me find one out. Well, let's do different versions of these questions. Aeronautics Space Agency is asking, can we get an opinion from everyone on stream right now the probability of a successful launch? So for the purposes of this question, we're going to assume it launches, and we are discussing what do we think the probability is of all of the milestones for the test flight being successful. I think once it does launch, it will be 100% successful. But hopefully I didn't just jinx anything. What do you think, Alex?
You should say 109% successful. Come on.
Yeah, I would have made
This
Chris happy.
is SLS.
That's hilarious.
I'm not sure, man. This is too complicated of a question. They shouldn't be asking this. It's a joke. Don't worry. My take. Oh boy. I'm gonna say it's actually high chances that it works. The only difference here is that there's so many, like, the parts have flown before. A lot of parts have flown before, but there's also a lot of things that haven't, and they are put together in a way that haven't launched before. So, oh man, the upper stage, I really hope it works because it's the Delta IV heavy upper stage, so that should work. The Orion launch abort system should jettison cleanly as well. Like, I hope that also works. The engines ignite, the SRBs also ignite, everything lifts off. So I guess if it launches, I think there's a good chance it at least makes it through SRB separation. And if the core stage goes well, then there's good chances that it goes to the moon. Now, after that, because Artemis 1 just doesn't end with a launch and putting Orion all on the way to the moon. Once Orion goes to the moon, that's another vacuum there of what the heck is going to happen there, right? What is going to happen? I have no idea, but I will guess it's probably a toss of coin there, 50-50, on whether it actually makes it back or not, in my opinion, because it's highly untested in like the actual environment of space, and totally new components and new everything. So it's a high risk, but that's how you test things, right? That's the whole deal of this Artemis 1 mission. Not just test SLS, but also test Orion. The service module is new. Orion per se, the capsule, is not new, but it's also built differently compared to the one that we saw on Exploration Flight Test 1 back in 2014. Jeez, that's 8 years ago. And so there's a lot of new things going on there, and it's probably 50-50 in my brain. I know it's probably way more like 99.999 for all the engineers at NASA, but my gut feeling is that it's probably going to be 50-50. And I guess, you could also joke that it's 50-50 because it either goes or not. So there you go.
All right. Yeah, that's a good answer. Philip, what do you think?
Well, again, if we're going to make the distinction between, do you think it's going to lift off on the next attempt versus what do you think it's going to do, right? But if we're talking about what happens after it lifts off, I know there's like some historical, like as we say, this is a first launch for the launch vehicle and almost completely a first flight for the spacecraft as well. And I mean, I think that the chances of it being successful after it lifts off are higher than whether it launches on a particular attempt or not. And I forget what the historical average is, but I'll probably say around 90% that everything goes, reasonably well. I mean, they're going to have some anomalies. It's just how I don't expect them to be. There's there are different types of failures. Like they were talking about stuff like, well, what Orion has 4 solar panel arrays. Well, what if one of them doesn't open?
Oh boy.
There's failures like that, and then there's failures like having the core stage engine shut down halfway through. That, like, obviously that would be loss of mission immediately. So there's a whole different range of failures. But I would say, again, because this went through the old style of development where you have something that is supposed to be, I don't know what the percentage is, but this is supposed to be more or less a finished product. And so that's why I would say it's in that kind of 90% chance of mission success after it lifts off.
Okay, so now let's answer the question of, do we think it's going to launch on this next attempt on the 16th? They have never gotten through the terminal count. Have we even gotten to the terminal count outside of the
you have to qualify it. They've gotten through terminal counts before, but with the whole vehicle, no. In launch configuration, no. So yeah, I mean, we talked about this when they rolled out a little more than a week ago, and I said 50-50 for, is it going to launch on the is it going to lift off on the next attempt? Yeah, it's like that I think is actually less of a certainty than whether it succeeds once it lifts off.
Yeah.
Because like they're going to be more conservative about rules in terms of committing to flight versus once you're in flight, you're committed, and the way you manage failures after you lift off is a lot different than how you manage failures before you lift off. So that's why, again, like you say, they have not gotten through a terminal count, with unqualified all the way through a terminal count, so to speak. So, I mean, again, the way I look at this is, can they get the vehicle tanked, and then can they start the terminal count, and then can they finish the terminal count? So, hopefully on Wednesday we start checking those three things off, and so we'll just see. But yeah, I'd say that's a much more of a wild guess of 50-50. But I just think you're kind of guessing more about when it's going to launch. So I know I've heard from people, because people watch the rollout broadcast, and I heard from people saying no, that are inside the program who are much more optimistic. But like I said, from my point of view, I would say it's about 50-50.
Yeah, I don't know. That the whole terminal count thing is like,
Yeah.
stresses me out a little bit.
I'm gonna be so nervous if we go into terminal count. Once we go into terminal count, that's gonna be nerve-wracking. Oh man.
What, like, once we're in terminal count, how does that work? Like, if they have an unexpected issue, like, do they have holds, or is it sort of one of those things like with Falcon 9 where it's like once it's going, it's kind of going, and then if you have any issues, it's
That's a timely question, because NASA actually, when they updated their countdown, they call it Launch Countdown 101 page, but they actually added that at the very bottom, and which is good, because we've heard little bits and pieces of this, but and it does kind of follow the same shuttle outline, with just different. The numbers are different, but the phases are very similar. So terminal count is from T-minus 10 minutes and all the way down, obviously, to 0 and liftoff. From T-minus 10 minutes to T-minus 6 minutes, they can hold the count for, as they say, for the duration of the launch window. So, for instance, if the weather, and they would do this sometimes in shuttle, not so much once they had the space station windows were so short that it really didn't matter. But for a 2-hour launch window, if you had an issue with, again, like range issue, weather issue, they might count down to 6 minutes and hold. So anywhere they can hold at T-minus 6 minutes for the entire window. From T-minus 6 minutes to T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds, now, because of all the things that are going on in that time period, they can only hold up to 3 minutes. But if they were able to resolve the problem inside of 3 minutes, they could resume and continue counting down to liftoff. If they count underneath 1 minute and 30 seconds, and anywhere from 1 minute 30 seconds to 33 seconds, they can stop, but they can't resume at that point. They can stop, and they can recycle back to 10 minutes and maybe try again. After they get underneath 33 seconds, if they stop, that's a scrub. So that's kind of the, again, as we watch this hopefully on Wednesday morning, those will be things, and obviously we'll be watching. And so if something, if we see them stop for whatever reason, then we will be looking at these rules here. We'll remind everybody of what's going on if we have to stop. But obviously we're hoping that they don't have to stop once they count at 10 minutes.
Yep, sure enough. Wigan Creative, really quickly, thank you for becoming a Capcom member almost 26 minutes ago, but we've been in the weeds of our discussion here, so thank you, Wigan Creative, for becoming a Capcom member. Once again, the different levels of the membership program give you different perks. And at Capcom level and above, you get Discord access. So pop into Discord, Wigan Creative, and say hey, and we hope you enjoy all the cool stuff that you get as part of the membership program, and we really appreciate all the support from all of our members. because we could not do what we do without you. Here's a simple one. Ryan McCall is asking, what is the launch inclination? I guess it's not quite simple because it changes throughout the launch window, right?
Right. So yeah, and thanks to Chris G, who got these numbers for. It sounds like they're going to actually change from one launch date to another, but for the 16th, the if they were to launch at the opening of the window, which would be 1:04 a.m. Eastern or 6:04 UTC, the launch azimuth would be 70 degrees, which is a little bit north of due east, and that would result in a 34-degree inclination at main engine cutoff. And then if they were to launch at the very end of the launch window, it would be more or less due east. So due east launch azimuth would be 90 degrees. The launch azimuth is actually 88.6. That's what we've been given. And so that would result in about a 28.5 degree inclination at MECO. And so in between, if they were to launch anywhere in between, so then that's the range from a launch azimuth of 70 degrees to a launch azimuth of approximately 89. So if they're to launch in the middle, then that would be, kind of split the difference, about 80 degrees. So if they launch on Wednesday, it's going to go more or less to the east. It's just a question of whether it goes a little bit north of east or whether it goes due east.
Got it. Johan M is saying it's raining cats and dogs. I hope Orion learned water protection from Starliner. We were talking about this in Discord a little bit the other day, right? Orion sort of has a nitrogen purge that was active the entire storm. Did I make that up, or is that true?
No, they have purges on the rocket and the spacecraft during the storm. So, and the one thing about the difference, one of the differences between Starliner and Orion is that Starliner has that pusher launch escape system, and Orion has got this sort of tractor rocket, the Apollo Saturn style tractor rocket that would pull off the top. And so Orion has basically an entire essentially payload fairing enclosing it. And so things like the service module thrusters and even the crew module thrusters are all inside of fairing panels. And so those provide some rain protection.
Very cool. Alan is asking, was the FTS, the flight termination system battery life issue resolved? They presume either extended or batteries were swapped. They swapped the batteries in the vehicle assembly building before rolling back out, right?
Right. And so, but basically we went back to what happened in September was they have up to 25 days. In September, they were able to negotiate an extension for September with the range. But then Hurricane Ian showed up and they went back into VAB. And so we're back to the 25 days again, even though they replaced all of those things that needed to be refreshed, but we're back to 25 days. And if they would, in theory, go back to the range and talk about an extension, but we're back to 25 days as of right now. And so the last day that they could launch in that, if 25 days is a hard and fast thing, would be November 25th.
Got it. And even then, they're running into those hurricane airspace relaxation situation or whatever we call that.
Right. Hurricane Thanksgiving. Yeah, Hurricane Thanksgiving.
Let's see here. Johan is saying, do they still use the Apollo era bunkers under the ramp? Is that still a thing if there's an issue and the crew has to rapidly egress?
I don't. The I forget what they call that room inside the pad.
The rubber room or whatever.
I think that's something like that. That sounds familiar, but there isn't going to be anybody out at the launch pad for this launch. Not even a crew. So I don't think even in something like a fire or something like that that you're probably better off even when you get to the next one. They're going to have basically those zip lines and that are going to go down to a bunker that's away from the actual launch pad.
Yep.
And I think that's still going to be their best bet if they, for whatever reason, needed to get away from the vehicle. But in a lot of cases, it'll probably be safer to stay inside for if there's something that like a fire, for instance, or something like that.
Yep.
You know.
Makes sense. Rocket Dog with a question specifically for you, Philip, asking how much of the SLS procedures were derived from shuttle. Would you say that SLS is more shuttle flavored or shuttle derived? I love this question. Twice baked shuttle flavor.
I
Yum, yum.
I think it's probably closer. I would say it's closer to shuttle derived actually than shuttle flavored. I mean, because you're reusing the space shuttle main engines, and I mean those are literally space shuttle main engines on the rocket. They flew on shuttle, and the solid rocket booster casings, those all flew on shuttle too. And there's a lot of actual shuttle hardware on those, and so yeah, it's not it is a lot closer to shuttle derived than just shuttle flavored.
I love it.
Yeah.
What a good question, Rocket Dog. That is shuttle flavored. It's some of our favorite flavors. Let's see.
Hydrogen flavored.
Hydrogen. Will is asking, will propellant loading be different with crew when they fly Artemis 2?
Oh boy.
That's a good question. I don't know for sure, but I know the countdown will be. They will be doing more tweaks to the countdown because they'll probably need to adjust where in the count the crew can go out to the vehicle. So we haven't really talked about it so much because of all the leaks and issues with hydrogen leaks and hydrogen bleed. But typically in shuttle, and we were just talking more derived than flavored, when shuttle got into stable replenish for all of the propellant tanks, and shuttle had all of 2, this vehicle's got 4. But when they got to stable replenish on all the propellant tanks, that was when the support crew, called the closeout crew, would go out to the pad and get the orbiter crew module ready for the crew. Basically just the final stuff. So it'll be the same thing for this vehicle. When they get this vehicle into stable replenish, that's probably when that would be when they would want, when the crew could go out. And then you have the issue of, well, how long can the crew stay inside before you run into, right? So yeah. Was that it's funny, I have to look at that again, but man, they got a lot of turkey vultures at Kennedy and Cape Canaveral, so that's probably another one of those. But
I thought that was a Falcon.
maybe, but yeah. So yeah, that's we'll just have to see where that is, because they don't want to go out too early. They can't go out 8 hours before launch, and they can't. And for this vehicle, they can't go out, half an hour before launch. So. Pardon me. They'll have to figure out what's the optimum time to give them. They're still going to want to have these relatively long, 2-hour long launch windows. So,
got it.
It's gonna be a total headache, I guess, for them to be able to fit their an hour or 2 gap in the countdown, because they already start at 9 hours before launch. So. It will be like 11 hours if they introduce the typical 2-hour gap in between. So
right, there might be like I haven't asked for a while, but it's possible that they add another hold. So shuttle had a hold at 6 hours, and it had a hold at 3 hours, and the 3-hour hold kind of lined up with when they thought they would get to stable replenish, and that was kind of that time frame where the shuttle crews would go out to the pad. So, we'll have to see what they do. But yeah, it'll look a little different. we'll just have to see what they do for Orion and for SLS in terms of where they think is a good point in the countdown to take the crew out to the pad.
You guys are having a technical discussion, and I'm still like trying to wrap my head around what flavor shuttle flavor is. Alex in chat, you said it was orange flavor. I kind of think it's like I don't know why, but I get like a stale Cheetos kind of vibe, which I guess is technically orange. But yeah, I'm kind of like
it's not ranch flavored, right? It's not ranch flavored. That would be right after they put the Sophie on, when it's very light colored, maybe, but it goes from Nacho very over time.
But that also makes me wonder what flavor SLS would be in compare. I guess, Alex, when you say it's orange flavor, would that be like orange Fanta or like Tang or something? I don't know. Chat needs to wait. Chat while you wait.
Carrot.
Speaking of flavors, we have an SLS shirt, and it comes in 2 flavors. It comes in
there you go,
a fun flavor and a more serious flavor. And what I mean by that is, you see how it's an exploded diagram, and there's different labels.
Damn, that's a great model that we have.
Right? This was from Remote Setup today.
There's
one of the shirts is more. Oh, look, it's getting meta. One of the shirts is more comedic, and one of the shirts is actually just labels the things with the names of what each thing is. So you can get the funny shirt that calls the RS-25s water generators, because that's what they do, or you can get the serious shirt that calls them RS-25s. We also have. Yeah, and it also, speaking of orange, it calls the thing orange, the core stage. We also have the calendar, which comes in 2 flavors. There's a Starship focused calendar and a general rocket calendar. And if you want to get both, I think you get a discount. I think that's still a thing. Hopefully it's not a thing, because then I just made a mistake. But either way, speaking of those shots of Nate at Remote Setup with the shirt on, I may or may not have left an expensive camera out there in the middle of the crawlerway without a bag on it, because I got nervous and ran away when I was short on time. And I shouldn't have done that, because, as you saw, it just rained a lot. So maybe consider buying a calendar because camera's expensive.
Buy a calendar because
probably
you could also slip into 2023. There you go.
Also,
I made a joke with that.
You can get a calendar, and you can mark off all of the SLS attempts that are coming up, and that way you can just know. Anyways, thank you for enduring.
That's another question that I was going to ask you, Jack, because I've asked questions to Philip about technical stuff, but Jack, how did Remote Setup go this time around? Because
I just told you I left a camera. Specifically a Canon R5, which is not a cheap camera.
Oh boy!
And I stupidly didn't put a bag on it. So it's.
Do you have any favorite shots that you want to take for this launch, or it's secret? Maybe hiding it until the launch.
No. I mean, okay. So if we want to like go like behind the curtain, or like inside baseball, or whatever you want to call it, for this is the 3rd time that we've set up remotes for SLS. For this attempt, they switched the spots around a little bit, and they gave us a spot that we had all asked for previously but didn't get. And so now, and that spot is specifically the crawlerway shot, like dead center on, was where that shot of Nate with the SLS shirt on was taken.
Oh.
You're on the crawlerway, you're looking, straight down the barrel at SLS. See, there you go. So you can see a lot of people were putting remotes there. This is kind of like the best shot in the house, I think.
Will we see the water generators here?
We will. So that was really nice. That was cool that we got that location. Other than that, I think everyone kind of did the best they could and put down as many cameras. We put down, Steven was out there putting down cameras. Nate was out putting out cameras. Thomas put down a camera. Michael, myself. God, am I forgetting anybody? But yeah, it's a good old time. Hopefully we get some good stuff. The thing is, and I want to be clear that I absolutely feel very, very, very thankful that I get to be out here for this. A lot of people would want to be in my shoes. At the same time, setting up cameras at L-3 is tricky. Normally we'll do like 12 hours or 24 hours or sometimes like 36 hours before a launch, and you can basically overnight as the dew point drops and condensation forms on the lens, that can ruin images pretty quickly. Just like when you don't bag a camera and there's rain all over it. But the mitigation for that normally is hand warmers. You put hand warmers around the lens, and hand warmers don't work for 3 days. So that's a little bit tricky. But yeah, the remote setup went well. Some cool images, and then right as remote setup was ending, there was a phase 2 warning that started up, a lightning warning. So kind of the end of it got cut short a little bit, and yeah, that was that. Good old time. And to answer everybody's question in chat, I see like 3 or 4 people have asked this. No, I didn't get almost left behind this time. In fact, maybe
that's the next thing.
Maybe not bagging the camera is why I didn't almost get left behind. I should have bagged the camera and almost got left behind again, because then I wouldn't have a destroyed multiple $1,000 camera, and I also would have some Prime member content, which of course would make Chris B happy. So.
And speaking of member content, we have some of that behind the scenes content for members. So
we do.
If you're a member, check that out on YouTube.
Yep, that is a thing. There will be some behind the scenes stuff, as we usually do from remote setup. Definitely keep an eye out for that. CM O'Connell, thank you for becoming a launch director member. Wow, that is one of the higher levels of support. You get your name at the end of NASA Spaceflight Live episodes, although I don't know if it'll propagate for this episode. But keep your eye open for future episodes at the very least. Thank you so much, CM McConnell, for that. It will. Okay, I'm hearing that it will. Thank you, CM McConnell. Enjoy all of the other perks. Enjoy the Discord access, and of course, we're
laughing for the same comment, right?
Chris Bergen in chat is saying Vandenberg recently awarded me with the most punctual person award. Thank you for that. That's we're just gonna breeze right past that. But thank you so much, CM McConnell, for the support there as a launch director. We super appreciate it. Moldy Space is asking, speaking of shuttle flavors, what would be your favorite shuttle-based ice cream flavor? Mine would clearly be Locke's Chilled Discovery Dream Cone. I'm just gonna go with that. I don't know how you can top that. It's maybe like a peanut butter chocolate Atlantis chip mint. I don't know. I got nothing. But thank you, Moldy Space, for the support. If we weren't so short on time, I think we could probably talk about shuttle flavors for another 30 minutes. I'm just going to look through and see if there's any other questions that we can wrap up with. Alex, did you have any that you wanted to go into or ask Philip? Or Philip, did you have anything that you wanted to hit on as we start to wind down here for the day?
I have a question. The weather today is a little bit not optimal, but how is it looking for launch day? Like, what's gonna be the I've heard even possibilities of fog at lunchtime.
Shut it. Shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Shut your mouth. Shut it.
Right now, the last forecast that was put out earlier today by the 45th weather was the probability of violating is only 10%, so 90% go. So, and only 90% humidity. So that's the forecast for.
Oh, there we go.
Well, so hopefully that'll help you a little bit. Hopefully you and everybody else who's trying to keep the lenses from fogging over. So, yeah, we'll have to see how that forecast is refined, but that's obviously a good weather forecast. And, as we've been talking about all the things that have to go right for a first launch, hopefully the weather, it would be nice to have a launch attempt where we were just talking about whether the weather is going to let them go. So, we'll just have to see how it goes over the next couple of days.
Yeah, I guess we will. Hopefully our cameras live and make some cool imagery, and hopefully we get this rocket off the ground finally. Oh man!
Will Michael get a try to use his tracker?
Yeah,
and
that would be
everything?
really nice. I'm hoping Michael gets some really awesome shot with his tracking robot. I'm hoping we get some cool imagery out of this. I know we will. I know at least other people will. I mean, we have the whole team out here doing it the best they can, so we should get some really cool stuff out of it. And I tell you, speaking of keeping the dew away, some of the darn right, or downright Rube Goldberg style creations I've seen. People trying to come up with ways to keep the fog off their lens, the dew off their lens. It's quite amusing. So hopefully some of that stuff works and we get some cool imagery and a nice successful launch. But yeah, I think that'll wrap us up this week. Alex, thanks for joining us on NSF Live this week.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and see you on the launch live stream, I guess.
Yep.
I'm surely gonna be around. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be commentating. It's gonna be a long night for me. It's the launch. It is, I think, 7:06 a.m. for me, so it's gonna be an all-nighter for me.
Yeah, it's 1 a.m. for us, so it'll be an all-nighter for us as well. And then remote setup or remote pickup is like in the late afternoon or early evening. So it's like you go to sleep at your own peril. You might sleep through remote pickup if you're extra tired. Philip, thank you for joining us on this episode of NSF Live.
My pleasure, and I'm sure we will have lots of time during the countdown on Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night to talk about to do more questions and talk about all of this stuff. Hopefully it's a little more smooth of a countdown this time.
For sure, hopefully. And yeah, we have a bunch more really good questions, but we just don't have time right now. So if we didn't get to your question, be sure to tune in to the live stream. We got a lot of questions, ironically, about when the live stream will start, which I don't have a time handy right at the moment that we plan on starting that up, but stay
Usually
tuned.
9 to 10 hours prior to launch, right?
Yeah, so stay tuned to NASASpaceflight's Twitter, and you'll know. We'll make it clear on the socials and whatnot. And of course, I am Jack Beyer. Thank you everybody for joining us, and also thank you so much to all of our members. Members, for real, y'all. We could not do what we do without you. It's amazing the amount of support that we get from everybody, even if it's just the super chats or hitting like or watching the ads. But the members are the core bedrock upon which I was going to say flower of NSF, but flowers don't grow from bedrock, upon which the tower of NSF has been built. NSF Towers. Haha, there we go. So seriously, thank you so much to all of our members. Thank you. Absolutely key to what we do. It's so helpful. And a video could be put out and not get a lot of views, even though it took a lot of work. And the main way a video like that would make revenue is via ads. And so the membership program kind of bypasses the whole ads thing and allows us to have a certain amount of revenue coming in that we know is going to come in month after month. And it allows us to plan things, and it allows us to do things and buy a bunch of gear, like the gear that we use to run the fiber streams and pull the fiber streams from Kennedy Space Center and NASA feeds, how we get all those super cool up-close engineering cameras for launch and everything. So once again, just thank you so much to all of our members. And I also have to say thank you to all of our volunteers. We've got all the people that do things for us, like the labelers and the chat mods, and people in the Discord that help us out and whatnot. So thank you so much to everybody on Team NSF for coming together and making the coverage of SLS the best that we absolutely can. And thanks to all the members and folks that were super chatting so that we can do the very same. Anyways, with that, let's go hang out at Space Coast Live, our 24/7 live stream of all things Space Coast and Kennedy Space Center. And you can continue to watch the stormy SLS, the stormy launch system, sit on the pad as we are just under 56 hours and 29 minutes away from launch. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you later, nerds.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
The chamber pressure looks good. Toggling up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight down, SCE off. Say again, SCE off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.